India's budget 2024-25 is expected to drive global growth. But the world's fastest growing economy does have some challenges that the new government will have to address to ensure sustainable and equitable growth. Take a look at this next report for more.
India, the fastest growing major economy globally, is becoming an increasingly significant investment destination. With robust growth momentum, strong external buffers and solid balance sheets of corporates and banks, the backdrop for this fiscal's full union budget is promising.
Well, I think we are very much on the way with a GDP growth of 7% plus. My belief is before the end of the year, you're going to see it at 8.5. You're seeing per capita growth also taking place. We have a young population, 50% of the people are below 35. And all the aspects of growth are there now centered in the economy. We have been able to get balance of payments because of our association with the Western world and the Eastern world. I think a combination of all these factors are really taking India forward in a very big way. The budget is definitely going to be a situation which we are going to see, which will be, again, a game changer because we have Modi 3.0 coming into the picture with a huge commitment of what the future is going to bring to us.
However, challenges like stubborn food inflation, weak consumption demand and tepid private investments require attention. Notably, 1/4 of the fiscal year has passed, meaning budgetary measures will mainly impact the second half. Maintaining fiscal discipline is crucial. Higher than expected dividends from the Reserve Bank of India allow for additional expenditure without derailing fiscal consolidation plans, helping keep borrowing costs in check and aligning debt ratios with monetary policy. Private consumption growth has slowed to a 2-decade low, excluding the pandemic year. A strong agricultural performance and normal monsoons could enhance rural consumption, though urban demand might soften due to higher interest rates. Tax relief for the middle class and support for rural infrastructure could help revive consumption. Persistently high food inflation exacerbated by climate change demands increased budgetary allocation for climate adaptation, storage and transport infrastructure, and agricultural R&D to raise productivity. For sustainable investment growth, the private sector must play a larger role. Government infrastructure projects and healthy corporate balance sheets provide a strong foundation. But further reforms, especially in land and labour, are essential to attract private and foreign investments and boost economic growth. India's focus on these priorities will help solidify its position as a top investment destination and sustain its rapid economic growth. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
All right, for more on this, we are now being joined by Mr. Manish Sabharwal, who's the Vice Chairman for Team Lease Services, joining us live from Bengaluru. Thank you so much for joining us right here on World Business Watch. Mr. Sabharwal, I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Are you anticipating any major surprises in this year's budget?
No, I think a few years ago, this government indicated that the budget is a financial statement. Of course, this budget becomes important because it's just after the election. But I think it'll sort of, I think economists have oversold fiscal and monetary policy as a solution to India's problems, right? If fiscal deficits could make countries rich, why would any country bother being poor? And monetary policy is at best a placebo, a painkiller, or a steroid. So I think the structural reform of India's economy, which began obviously in 1991, but has accelerated in the last 10 years as we have targeted formalization, financialization, industrialization, and human capital, is what I expect the budget to sort of make some more down payments on some of the areas, but overall just make India a better habitat for job creation. Clearly, the challenge seems to be jobs and skills boiling up both ground up and top down as important issues. And I think the budget will pay some attention to how to make the daily life of employers or just make India a fertile habitat for job creators.
Better habitat for job creation. I just want to take it a little further from there. When we also talk about India's economic growth, how do you anticipate the union budget, of course, the one we're expecting now, how it will drive India's economic growth further?
Well, I mean, as I said earlier, I don't think our spending should expand quite substantially, even though India's tax to GDP ratio is the highest it's ever been at 18%. But a modern state is a welfare state. The question is, do you finance the welfare state with taxes or with debt? In the last election, we saw a lot of rhetoric around the welfareism, but welfareism is not a substitute for private sector job creation. The private sector job creation depends on infrastructure, it depends on macroeconomic stability, and of course, it depends on law and order. And I think on those three big things, India is consistently warm rather than hot or cold. Over the years, we've been compared to China. But my sense is India is not China. We envy China's ability to move 700 million people from farm to non-farm employment, and that is our challenge. But I wouldn't want to live in China. I don't think India can be China. The fixed costs of democracy have been digested now. So I think that the growth in the next few years is very different from the way other countries did it, right? I mean, India exported more software than Saudi Arabia did oil in 2021. Now, no economist would suggest that services exports, goods exports are 24 trillion and services exports are only 6 trillion. So economists say, oh, well, services exports are not big enough. And of course, they're not big enough to move the needle for a country like India. But, software employment is only 0.8% of India's GDP, but it's of our labor force, but it's 8% of GDP. So I think growth overall, it's a unique time in India. It's not once in a decade or once in a millennium. It's once in the lifetime of a country when we have compounded the reforms since 1991. We have accelerated them with things like bankruptcy, GST, a cleanup of the banking system, and many other reforms that you referred to earlier. So my sense is there's a bunch of luck headed our way. I hope Xi Jinping doesn't get a fourth term. I hope he gets a life term because he's our biggest ally in terms of China factory refugees looking to move out of the uncertainty that China has created. I hope we can take advantage of that, and I think we are starting to do that. So my sense is if we keep macroeconomic stability, which means keep inflation expectations under control, which so far has done, keep fiscal spending under control, public debt to GDP peaked at 90, we've started bringing it down to 85, we'll bring it down to 80 is the target. So if the government just focuses this budget on macroeconomic stability, infrastructure and law and order, the private sector and foreign investors, right? 50% of India's foreign direct investment since 1947 has come in the last 6 years.
Mr. Sabharwal, yes, I wanted to just come in there and just bring the focus back on enhancing employability. Now, when we talk about that, how can the budget address the skill gap in various industries to enhance employability?
I mean, we have a program now called NEP 2020. I don't think there's an emergency surgery possible on human capital. NEP 2020 had a 15-year glide path for implementation. We must bring that glide path down to 5 years. So NEP is a new national education policy. It removes the apartheid between skills and education. It focuses on school education. It focuses on holistic education. So as with most things in India, the question is not what is to be done, but how is this to be done. So I think if the budget sort of gives a firm indicator that the glide path of 15 years indicated in NEP is being accelerated and implemented faster, then that would be the right way. It would also enable degree apprenticeships. India only has 500,000 apprentices. We should have 15 million apprentices. Learning by doing, learning while earning is key. So I'm hoping that degree apprenticeships, which are really an innovation which combines sort of learning with modularity, learning with flexible delivery, learning while earning, given the focus. So I think that NEP's acceleration should help India's revolution going on in human capital, and obviously the budget can indicate, but this is a non-fiscal sort of indication of policy more than an allocation of money.
And as you mentioned earlier, it's not just about what is to be done, it's also how it is going to be implemented. But on that note, we'll pause it for now over here. Of course, there'll be lots to discuss once the budget is out. And thank you so much for joining in. That was Manish Sabharwal, Vice Chairman, Team Lease Services, joining us from Bengaluru. Thank you so much for making time for us, sir.
Thank you.